Attention, VCE Global Politics teachers. This is a teaching resource for you. I'm here to help you help your students connect with the content on Chinese power in the Asia Pacific. I originally produced this presentation for the 2023 VCE Global Politics Teachers Conference in March of this year, hosted by Social Education Victoria. This presentation was to be my last public presentation as Dr. Ben Habib, Senior Lecturer in International Relations, ahead of my departure from academia in June. But unfortunately, I was unwell on the day and wasn't able to attend the conference. However, now that I've got some spare time, I'm making this recorded video version of the presentation publicly available. This video is a teaching resource. My aim is not to pontificate about Chinese power per se, but rather to share some online learning tools that I've used in explaining Chinese politics and power to undergrad and master's students. This content for this video was made for secondary school teachers in Victoria who teach the subject global politics in the Victorian Certificate of Education, or VCE. And in particular, that subject's area of study 2 on Chinese power in the Asia Pacific. But this might also be a useful resource for VCE students studying global politics. By quick way of introduction, I'm a Northeast Asia analyst by region and a North Korea specialist by trade, but with deep connections to China as well. I've spent a lot of time there over the years, doing field research, leading student study tours, and as a tourist. This country has changed remarkably since my first visit there in 2002, as has its regional and global footprint of power. For this video, here's the skinny. First, I'll provide my framing and explore how we connect our students to the curriculum. Then I'll get into the content and related online resources, asking what factors shape China's national interests, what are China's core national interests, and what are some of China's primary instruments of power projection. I'll then briefly introduce a number of online learning resources related to this content with URLs. But let's start with how we connect our students to the global studies curriculum. So this raises some interesting questions. How do we develop the knowledge and skills of our students around Chinese power in the Asia Pacific? And how do we bring to life the key knowledge and skills identified in the global politics curriculum? Now, for the teachers watching, all of you are unique as teachers, all of your students are unique as learners, and we all draw on different representations of knowledge to help us get it. So to flesh out how we might represent the core knowledge, ask yourself, what are some of the common questions that your students ask in class about China and about Chinese power? Another issue to think about. What different representations of the global politics content do your students tend to respond best to? You know your students better than anyone else, so what brings them those aha moments of understanding? The different online tools that I'll share shortly offer different types of representations of elements of the China case study, offers different entry points for students to latch onto the content. The aim of using these is to help students kill a few birds with one stone, so to speak, developing their knowledge and skills through their analysis of and creative play with these resources. Now to the content. The global politics curriculum asks about national interests. We know that this is contested territory. It's not just about identifying national interests, but also who gets to decide what counts as national interest, whose interests are represented as national interests, and what national interests emerge organically as a result of geography and larger global forces. Depicted here is a tool that I remember from my first year Introduction to International Relations class at the University of South Australia. And this is the Foreign Policy Formation Funnel. Now, it's a simple tool, its purpose being to help students think more systematically about the interests that shape the funnel and about what gets spat out at the bottom as an actioned national interest. What gets spat out of the funnel as a national interest is shaped by global influences, state level or domestic influences, the impact of key individuals, as well as the policy-making process itself. And those influences can include geography, systems, networks and flows, key actors and institutions, along with key people. One of my favourite apps to help students tease out the relationship between national interests and geography, and an app that's really easy to use as a starting point, is Google Earth. And this is essentially a geospatial dataset. There's so much for students to untangle here in how geography helps shape national interests. We can look at China's geographical position relative to its neighbours, relative to its adversaries and its key trade partners. We can see its topographical features, showing where its geography makes it vulnerable or offers protection. The position of China's key urban centres, infrastructure networks, natural resource stocks, and production and trade hubs. You can zoom in and look at military installations and key strategic choke points. Among other things, there's lots of things to untangle here. I do a Google Earth treasure hunt in class in my subject Contemporary Politics of Northeast Asia along these lines. Focusing on the process of foreign policy formation in China, we can see how national interests are shaped and prioritised in the institutional structure of the government. I recommend this institutional organogram by Tristan Kenderdine from The Diplomat. Organograms are great in showing the dirty complexity of institutional processes, which are not always obvious to students who often come into the course with a very monolithic view of how governments work. Let's now look at China's core national interests. My contention is that China's national interests can be grouped under these 5 overarching headings, and these are territorial integrity, economic development and maintaining economic growth, internal political stability, regional strategic stability, and emerging global leadership. You can locate specific examples underneath these goals of grand strategy. The specific issues that might fall under the banner of territorial integrity include national sovereignty around China's borders with its neighbours. It could include the goal of the eventual integration of Taiwan and asserting its claims in the South China Sea. Now, how might we help students examine China's many different border disputes with its neighbours? What I've shown here is an interactive map from Metrocosm, which allows students to do exactly this, showing where each border dispute manifests along the Chinese frontier and with whom. If we're talking internal stability, this could include how the Chinese Communist Party maintains social stability, controls dissent, and ensures that it maintains its grip on power. It could include how China maintains control over frontier regions in Xinjiang, Tibet, Yanbian, and Hong Kong, for example. Looking at the Xinjiang case study, I recommend the Xinjiang Data Project, published by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. It's got interactive maps with information on specific sites, as well as short articles documenting different issues raised by the dataset. What about regional stability? What does stability mean in an external, regional sense? This could include China's efforts to prevent conflict and instability in the Asia-Pacific. Could include its expanded footprint of military power projection, particularly in the South China Sea and out to the first island chain. Maintaining cooperative, if not always friendly, relationships with its neighbours. Could include ensuring energy security by securing access to oil, gas, and other critical natural resources, along with the sea lanes through which those resources arrive in China and through which China trades with the world. The interactive website that I recommend here is the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative. It's got a number of interactive features, including maps of maritime boundaries, maps of China's power projection capabilities, and time series satellite photos of man-made islands across the South China Sea. Economic development as a national interest has both internal and external angles. So internally, the CCP has a long-standing social bargain with the Chinese people, in which it promises to maintain economic growth to continually improve people's living standards in return for the public's acceptance of continued CCP authoritarian rule. To visualize this to students, you could go back to Google Earth to explore the stark differences between urban and rural landscapes in China. Externally, the CCP is attempting to expand its network of trade partners around the world to continue infrastructure investment and cultivate markets for Chinese-produced export goods. It also needs to preserve the security of the trade routes between itself and its trade partners. To illustrate this, I love the website maritimetraffic.com, which highlights key maritime shipping lanes and trade hubs using real-time ship transponder data. If we're talking about China's goal of emerging global leadership, the most important structural manifestation of this has been the establishment of new international economic institutions to provide the institutional infrastructure for an emerging China-led global financial system. The most consequential of these institutions has been the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB. This interactive website, published by the Coalition for Human Rights in Development, documents where the AIIB projects have been established around the world by country, by sector, and by human rights risk category. So this can give students a flavour of what the economic tentacles of global leadership look like, as well as the basis for comparison with the economic tentacles of US global economic power. In this last section, I want to look at China's instruments of power projection. The Global Studies curriculum identifies different types of power. There's military power, which is about force. Political power is about influence. Diplomatic power is about building relationships and resolving conflicts. Economic power is about wealth, and cultural power is about values. Now, in practice, all of these types of power are interrelated and interdependent. Let's start with military power. This refers to a country's ability to use force, both to defend itself and to project power abroad. Key issues to consider here are China's ongoing military modernization and upgrading of its nuclear weapons stockpile, along with the emergence of its space-based capabilities and expansion of power projection in the South China Sea and beyond, along with its emerging cyber capabilities. Military power can be measured by the size and capability of a country's armed forces, including its weapons, equipment, and training. The Lowy Institute's Asia Power Index provides detailed statistics for all regional states, including China, along with the ability to compare countries across all of its metrics. This website is a serious go-to resource in my teaching and is highly recommended. For our China case study, political power is about China's ability to shape global governance and international institutions, as well as how it attempts to influence the behaviour of other countries through diplomacy and persuasion. This can be measured by China's ability to mobilise support from other countries and to advance its interests in international negotiations. However, China's growing international political clout is also leading to resentment and resistance from other countries, as we've seen in the context of China's wolf warrior diplomacy. The online resource I recommend here is a series of short debates between China experts published by the Lowy Institute. Now, this one isn't as visually sexy as some of the other online tools, but the Socratic to and fro of these debates exposes students to multiple competing perspectives in a thoughtful way. Coming back to China's economic power, this is about China's ability to generate wealth and to use economic tools such as trade and investment to influence other countries. I mentioned the AIIB before. Now I want to draw attention to China's Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, which I see as the most important element of China's power projection of global economic power. This website, published by the Makeda Institute for China Studies, provides an interactive map of the BRI, highlighting key trade routes along the BRI, as well as data on specific BRI projects. Diplomatic power refers to China's ability to influence other countries through formal diplomacy. It can be measured by China's ability to build alliances, to resolve conflicts, and to advance its foreign policy objectives through peaceful means, including through the provision of aid to other states. Here, I recommend the Lowy Institute's Pacific Aid Map, which provides interactive data at both country and local levels with site-specific information about aid donors across the Pacific. This includes state donors as well as private and NGO donors. And it's a great resource for evaluating China's aid footprint in the region, as well as comparing its influence with that of other states. Lastly, let's consider cultural power, which is about China's ability to shape global norms and values and international culture through cultural exports. I recommend the website Soft Power 30, which provides a ranking of the top 30 countries according to the strength of their soft power capabilities. In terms of value for students, both the rankings themselves and their analysis of the rankings requires a process of critical evaluation that's valuable to the learning process. Well, that's all from me. I hope you find these resources useful. Thank you for your attention and all the best in your journey with the Global Politics curriculum.